here today and making it here on time. We've had 10 minutes of networking. I like to call it networking because personally, I don't like waiting for those who come much, much later because it's punishing those who come early. So thank you all for coming early. Today, we're going to have a conversation over the next hour and a half, pretty much, which is going to focus around fundraising, particularly the speed of fundraising and the things that founders in the room can do in today's day and age to accelerate their raises. First of all, before I get started, I want to give a very big thank you to our hosts, Gately, ably represented by Sam in the room. Please, a round of applause. Yeah, don't worry, you're going to hear from them in a bit when we get to the panel session. So, just to give you a bit of a brief as to what to expect over the next 40 minutes thereabout, I am going to share very deeply and quite passionately, I've been told I tend to get, around the playbook for a faster fundraise. And thereafter, we're going to move swiftly into a panel where we have a range of experts in the room that will be helping us talk about the things that founders can do to accelerate their fundraise, mistakes that they make that they can begin to avoid to help them successfully raise capital. Most good-looking young man in the room. My name is Davies. I lead a company called Pitch Hub, and essentially what we do at Pitch Hub is we help founders raise capital. If you give me your permission, I will tell you a bit more about what we do much later over the course of today's conversation. I'd like to begin this conversation around the playbook for a faster fundraise here. And this is basically talking about where we're at on a macro level as it relates to the fundraising landscape. I'd like to begin that journey from 2022 because prior to 2022, we know what's happened. So first we had Brexit, then we had COVID. But COVID was actually quite interesting for fundraising because there were a lot of deals that were done during COVID, right? The hysteria, valuations were the best during COVID. If you were a founder, COVID was the best time to raise capital because people were raising at crazy valuations. And then at 2022, the correction started. People that put in money into businesses in 2020, 2021, a number of those businesses crashed, valuations crashed. And then 2022, 2023, we had the Ukraine war. And thereafter, we had change of government, and then we had Trump and tariffs. So pretty much over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of macro-level disruption. And when there's macroeconomic disruption, those who hold capital just hold it, right? So you don't have as many deals happening. So generally speaking, it's been quite a challenging last 3 years for entrepreneurs that are looking to raise capital. And the question then becomes, where does that leave us today in 2025, especially Q4 2025? Well, even though there's been all of those challenges, since the beginning of this year, we've sort of like entered into the correction period where investors are now beginning to do more deals, look at more opportunities, and engage more and more with founders. However, they are being more cautious, more than ever before. A lot of caution is taken when investors are looking at deals. The due diligence phase seems to be taking longer because people just need to make sure that we're investing in the right type of businesses. So rounds generally are taking longer. And according to Bohust, the very trusted data platform, particularly around all things fundraising and investment, the average time currently that it takes founders, particularly founders in the pre-seed and seed stage of fundraising, the average time it takes them to successfully raise a round is currently 15 months. Now, that is a lot of time, right? That is more than one full financial year. So it's quite a length when you're thinking about bringing in resources into the business to actually execute some growth strategies. Because if it's taking us that long to raise capital, then it means that our growth objectives are delayed by that long. The other thing to mention is another report that was released at the end of 2024 by Tech Nation, which states that from launching a business to getting to Series C, which is where you have a very well-matured growth business, it's taken approximately 9.6 years. As of 2018, that number was 5 years. So deals generally are taking longer. But also, the absolute number of deals that are being done is shrinking. Compared to 2018, the number of deals being completed are at the lowest. Also, there was this report that the British Business Bank released last year, which is between 2024, the second half of 2024, when compared with the first half of 2024, we had almost half the number of deals. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? Because even in the midst of the shrinking volume of deals, there's an interesting phenomenon that we are observing in the fundraising world, which is the fact that rounds are getting bigger. So we're getting less deals done, but for every deal that is done, founders are able to raise more capital. Now, when we began to dig deeper, myself and my team, around the data around that, one of the things that began to emerge is the fact that even though the absolute number of rounds are getting smaller, the idea there is that investors are taking more time looking at these businesses and ensuring that the businesses are very solid. And once you get presented with a very solid proposition, then the founder is in a great position to raise at a better valuation. And generally speaking, in terms of the absolute amount of money that they can raise, it's generally getting bigger. So this chart is quite an interesting one. This is the total number of funds raised by UK businesses in the first half of 2024, £1.2 billion. In the second half, it fell to 0.77. And in the first half of 2025, even though the deal volume has significantly reduced, the absolute sum of money raised is still very close to 1.2 million. So there is reason for optimism. And from the founders that we are engaging with, that we've been engaging with, particularly over the last 6 months, we're seeing deals get over the line faster. Now, I can throw more stats at you, but I won't. What I would do instead is to highlight 3 things, particularly if you're a founder in the room and you're thinking of raising capital. There are 3 things that have become very imperative based on conversations that we've had with investors and things that we've observed in the market. The first is that for every investor that is actively investing right now, and by the way, I should mention, investors are actively investing right now. I mean, Tech Week started yesterday, but even beyond yesterday, weeks prior, conversations that we're having with investor, Oxford Innovation Advice had an investor gathering about 2 weeks ago and had a good networking session with lots of investors. There is money to be invested, right? However, for almost every single one of them, they are prioritizing validated businesses. I have an idea, it's not getting funded. So one of the first things that you must do as a founder is to begin to find ways to validate your proposition, whether that be by getting customers in, waiting list, IP protection, whatever it is that signify validation in your business, it has become ever so more important. One of the things to highlight here before I move ahead is the demand and supply curve of capital. Right now, investors have the advantage because there is a shortage of supply of capital. But when you think about the demand side, founders looking for capital, AI has even just doubled the number of people that are founding businesses. So there's so many more founders looking for capital that is not such an abundant supply. So first things first, founders must validate because the validated propositions are the ones that are getting the attention from investors. The other thing, though, is you as a founder actually dictate the pace. Investors are very clear as to what they're looking for. They are very clear around what the parameters are. If you come ready, and you come ready to the table, and thankfully during the panel session we've got an investor on the panel, they can tell us their perspective on this. But if you come to the conversation ready, chances are you're going to raise faster. And the last one I should emphasize, and I should emphasize it with a bit of care because I tend to be very cruel when I'm speaking with founders around this. You cannot come with mediocrity. You cannot present documents that are not well put together. Pitch decks that look like, sorry, the academics in the room, academic thesis. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for scientific document. A pitch deck, for example, has to be very visual. Your financial model has to be accurate. It has to be grounded in sound assumptions. Let's get into the playbook. So fundamentally, from all of the conversations that we've been having, we've identified three core things that founders must do, three core areas that can get you to a deal faster. And for me, that's the core of today's conversation. It's preparation, it's fit, and it's execution. So I'm going to go through each of these three, one after the other. So at the preparation phase, what can founders do to actually grab the attention of investors, keep that attention, and convert that attention to deals? The very first thing is to ensure that you're coming forward with an investable business. See, we can have all the conversations we want around, getting your pitch decks pretty and, making sure that you speak well to investors and storytelling and all those other things that we teach founders. But fundamentally, if the asset to be invested in is not a sound asset, no investor is going to put their money in it. And so the question is, what makes for an investable business? What makes for an asset that an investor finds appealing? For us, it's first, you have a viable business, you have a sizable opportunity, and you have a backable team. We call it the investability bot. Viable business. The business has to be fundamentally sound in its unit economics. It makes money, it knows its customers, it knows how it will distribute the product to customers. The cost of customer acquisition is low, lifetime value of the customer is high. It makes financial sense. We cannot run away from that. The second thing, though, is once investors have validated that this is an opportunity that is viable, the second question becomes, is it a sizable opportunity? Is it the kind of business that is going to bring in the level of returns that we need to justify our investment? These are crucial conversations that investors are looking to have with founders. So when you are presenting your proposition, a lot of work must have gone into validating the fact that, yes, our business is solid, but also there is a market for this. And by the way, speaking of sizable opportunities and market, the days of saying a KPMG report states that our industry is a 30 billion industry, those days are gone. Investors want to see granularity in the level of your work. The level of the work that you're doing to estimate the market, there has to be a bit of granularity to it. I was saying to a group of founders just last Friday at the session I was delivering, if you're estimating the total size of your market, well, where does the market start? What is the definition of the market? The market is the absolute number of customers that you're serving. So if you said, for example, we're serving, moms in the UK, the question is, how many of them are there and how much do they spend on your product in a year? Multiply those two numbers, then you would have come up with a bottoms-up approach of computing the size of your market. That level of granularity would really, really help you. So essentially, you need to have a viable business, a sizable opportunity. But the third point I want to emphasize really, really deeply. A backable team is very crucial. If the investors that you're approaching love your business, they think it's going to make money, but they don't like you. And by the way, there is substance to the likeness. I'm going to explain in a second. But if they don't like you, you're not going to get a deal. It is proven. I mean, we're all business people. People do business with those who they know, like, and trust. We call it the KLT factor. As it relates to the team, though, that is going to a fundraising proposition, for us, the very first thing that we look out for in every founder is the team must have the competence to take that product to market. Generally speaking, in every business, there are two broad areas of competencies. There is the technical competencies, which is the set of skills that enable the product to be created or the service to be delivered to the customers. And then you have the commercial competencies, which is everything that is involved in actually selling it. So you're talking sales, marketing, branding, the rest of that. The technical competencies, product development, whatnot. Fundamentally, every business that is thinking of raising capital must have within the business both competencies covered. If you're a founder and you're predominantly commercial, I would strongly advise that you begin to round out your competencies by getting somebody that's technical into the business. That could be a co-founder. That could be an advisor, right? That could be a NED, right? Non-executive director. But whatever it is that you do, ensure that fundamentally your team has got the balance of both technical and commercial competencies. Because investors don't want you using their money to run experiments. They want you to use their money to blow up validated experiment, to grow validated experiment, to actually multiply things that you've seen work, right? So we want to make sure that we've got that competence in the team. Competence is good once you have it all rounded. But secondly, they want to see what we call founder product fit. It's not just enough that you have the well-rounded competencies that is required to actually make the business work, but the founder must be one that has an affinity with that industry in one way or the other. It could be because you've got a degree in that area and you've studied it extensively, or you've done research on it. It could be because you have come from that industry, you used to be a stakeholder or an employee in that space, you've identified a problem, you've developed something, or you've actually experienced a problem. There has to be some story, some affinity with the product. And the third thing around team, beyond the competence and the founder product fit, is that you just generally have to be a good, ethical, values-driven person. There is no better way to say this. If you're going to be asking somebody for money, please show up early to meetings, right? Communicate, be polite, all these basic things that seems to have gone out of the window these days. I'll give you a typical example, one that everyone can relate to. Show of hands if you use ChatGPT. Everybody uses ChatGPT these days. If you're a founder and you're sending an email to an investor, it's very easy for you to go on ChatGPT and say, I am sending my pitch deck to an investor. Draft me an introductory email. And it will do a fantastic job of doing that. But imagine founder A, ChatGPT provides that report, copies it, pastes it, and sends it. Founder B, ChatGPT provides that report, copies it, pastes it, edits it, makes it human, takes away all the easy AI tells, and then sends it. As the investor, founder A has just communicated to me that they are not a thorough person. And I want to put my money in entrepreneurs that are thorough, that do their homework, that will literally go through the problem with a fine-tooth comb. Founder B sends me an email, I can tell that this is thorough. Because if somebody, I don't know about you guys, but if someone sends me a ChatGPT email, I can tell. You know those long unnatural dashes and all those other tells? It's so easy to tell, right? So things of that nature, because right now it's so easy to be mediocre with what you can get from AI. But if you're going to be raising capital, you need to make sure that your approach is solid. So you need to go the extra mile, go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that your proposition, your person, everything you're presenting is presented with the utmost quality. Now, if you've done all of those preparatory works around your business, before you then begin to approach investors, you need to be absolutely clear around how much money you're asking for and how much valuation you're going to be raising at. Well, the first thing to mention around the ask is that it needs to be appropriate with your growth stage. You can't be raising your first round of funding as a pre-seed business, no revenue, no validation, no IP, but you want 3 million at a 20 million valuation. It's going to be quite challenging. But valuation, there's something to talk about there. According to Bohurst data as well that I was taking a look at this morning, between last year and this year, valuation has fallen, generally speaking, across the industry. But wait for this. If you're at the pre-seed and seed stage, valuation fell by 6%. Average valuation was 4 million. If you're at the Series A and Series B stage, valuation fell by 10%. Now, businesses beyond Series B, valuation fell by 43%, almost half. So valuation, again, is getting a lot of scrutiny. So it's something to be paid attention to. However, for the funding ask, the amount of money you're asking investors for us, one of the things that we advise founders is he has to achieve 3 core objectives. The first thing is it must be sufficient to execute the growth plan. At this point, I should say, if you're a founder raising capital, you should understand that you only raise capital for one thing and one thing only. You raise capital to execute a growth strategy. If you don't have a growth strategy that you're executing, you have no business raising capital. So for example, you don't just raise capital because you want to develop a new product. It's fine to develop a new product, but that development has to be a part of a holistic strategy that will get the business to a particular level. Right? So for example, there's a growth strategy you're executing that is tied to a growth objective, which could be, for example, we want to get our business to a 10 million annual recurring revenue by 2028. That is a growth objective. In order to get there, we're going to implement this sales strategy, we're going to develop this new strand of product, and we're going to develop partnerships in this area. Those are the things that we need money for. So that's why you raise capital. You raise capital to execute a growth strategy. So the first point here is whatever money you raise must be enough to actually execute that strategy successfully. The second point is it should give you at least 18 months runway. Investors want you to take that money, sit with the business, and actually make it work. We don't want you dipping back into the market a year later looking for money again. Right? So if you're raising capital, ideally you want to be aiming for about 36-month runway, but at the very least 18 months. The third point to mention here is that whatever money you're raising now should be sufficient to achieve the key milestone that you need for the next round. Founders, please listen to this. You need to think 2 rounds ahead. This round, you need to raise the capital that you need to execute your growth strategy. But here's the thing that I say to founders. Growth is a perpetual thing. For the rest of your business life, you're going to be growing. As a result, what you want to do is to break growth down into sprints, right? So for example, 3-year sprints. So over the next 3 years, this is our objective. And when you hit that objective, you set another objective and you go on a new growth sprint, which then ties into your fundraise. If, for example, your plan is to raise your next round of funding 3 years from now at a 20 million valuation, there are key milestones that your business would have to hit for investors to agree to a 20 million valuation at that point. So, for example, if you want to have a 20 million valuation, can you get your revenue, say, for example, to 5 million, 2 million, 3 million annual recurring revenue? Right? So if that, for example, is the milestone that you need to hit at the next round, then whatever money you're raising at this round should be enough to build your business to get to that milestone. Because if you don't get to that milestone, you're most likely going to be raising a down round. And nobody wants a down round. So these are the very crucial things around your ask that you need to pay attention to. Now, when your ask is done, you're then going out to investors with your outreach. And there is that primal document that we use in investor outreach. Everybody knows it. It's the pitch deck. Well, there's some conversation around the pitch deck as well. This chart, which is from DocSend, literally shows the time spent by investors on pitch decks. This is 2018, this top line here. This line at the bottom is 2025. Essentially, this was taken as of June this year. Investors spent 2.3 minutes on reviewing the pitch deck. What that tells us, and when we work with founders, this is what we focus on. Skimmability of the deck. Because investors aren't reading your pitch deck, they are skimming through. Right? They're looking at it very quickly, high level. Does this make sense? Does this work? So for us, there are a number of things that we do with clients as it relates to pitch deck. Number one, it has to be visually appealing because that holds attention. Now, when the attention has been secured, you then need to make sure that the investor that is reading your document can understand at the speed at which they read. This sounds very simple, but I need to talk about it a bit more. Sometimes when you construct the sentences with which you describe your business, you construct them in such a way that makes the investor have to read it 2 times, 3 times before they get it. Who knows what I'm talking about, right? You have to read it a number of times, or worse, they have to go Google certain terms. Investors are smart people, don't get me wrong, but they're not universally smart. There are certain things, they probably know very deeply about their vertical and then little about a lot. So if you are constructing your narrative around your pitch deck in a way that is difficult for the average person to read, the rule of thumb is a 10-year-old should be able to read your pitch deck and understand. So the point is, the sentences, the words, the structuring of your narrative has to be something that is understood at the speed of reading. As they are reading it, they are understanding it. There is no reading it again and again. Nobody has time for that. There are so many deals that are waiting to be evaluated. So skimmability is a very important piece of getting the deck ready. And once the deck is ready and sent and conversations begin, you need to have a whole suite of other documents. We generally refer to them as the deal room. And I've literally just put the rule of thumb in there in terms of the things that you would need to have, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to have every single thing, but for example, under the pitch assets, the first column there, you're definitely going to need your pitch deck and an executive summary at the very least. On the second point, you cannot skim on anything. Financial assets. You're going to need your historical account if you've been trading for a while. You're going to need a very sound financial model because the financial model talks about the future and how what the financial implication of your strategy is going to be when you execute it. And then the ask and use of funds. How are you going to deploy the capital that you're asking for? The metrics and the assumptions as well that underline your numbers. All of those you must have. Your legal assets as well. Term sheets, shareholder agreement, and whatnot. All of those things have to be available. And the important thing here is you cannot drip feed information to investors. You've got to make sure that all of these are ready. Remember, we're talking about speed today. If you do the work of getting all of these done at once, then it becomes easy when you get into the market. So that's you preparing. The second point I want to hit on is the fit. If you do this right, it's going to speed up the fundraise. And what am I referring to as the fit? Well, investors will only invest in businesses that are right for their investment thesis. My perfect way that I like to explain this is this. However beautiful your car is, I don't care if you're driving a Rolls-Royce Spectre. If I'm going to London and you're driving to Manchester, I'm not hitching a ride with you because we're going different directions. When interests align, deals are struck, because fundamentally a fundraise is a commercial agreement based on aligned interest, and that's the key word. It's a commercial agreement based on I've got certain interest, you've got certain interest. I'm interested in investing in climate tech business, you are a climate tech business. I'm interested in investing in biotech business, you are a biotech business. That's what we're talking about here. Align interest between a founder that is ready and a funder that is willing. That's what we're looking for here. So fundamentally, as a founder, you want to do your research around the investors that you're reaching out to identify the verticals that they prioritize. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not hard to find. Investors publish it on their website. It's there. It's on their social media. It's not hard to find. What are their priorities? Or just go look at their portfolio and look at the kind of businesses they invest in. Right? So the approach has to be targeted. Spray and pray, which is what a lot of founders used to do. It's literally a waste of time. Spray and pray is where anybody that you find out is an investor, you literally just approach them. This is what we are. This is what we're doing. You know, we're raising capital. Give us some. Let's have a meeting. Well, if you haven't done your research, you haven't done your homework, they're just not going to pay attention because it's just not worth the time. What you want to do is do your research and approach only those that are aligned. That alignment is very critical because even when you take a look at it from the investor perspective, and this is rooted in human psychology, it's nothing special. Nobody really cares what you know until they know that you care. If you haven't taken the time to find out what I'm looking for, why should I pay attention to you? So please, as much as you can, you want to be targeted when you're making your investor outreach. Now, this next point is one that is golden. I mean, I work in the fundraising space, helping founders raise capital. I'm sure that we have a number of other people in the room as well who do the same thing, and they can attest to this fact. Warm introductions are your best bet. If you want to get to yes faster, you want to begin that journey with a warm introduction. There are people who've got relationships with investors who can introduce you to investors. And so the question is, if Davies is saying, let's do warm introductions, and that's the way that works, does it mean cold outreaches don't work? Well, cold outreaches work, but they have to be very well calibrated. What do I mean by that? The best way to use a cold outreach is to complement what you've already got going on. Because somebody that hasn't heard anything about you before and is getting this first message from you are more likely to respond to you when they see elements of validation about your raise in your outreach. So for example, you're raising £1 million in a seed round. So for this £1 million, say for example, you got a commitment from a VC already for 400,000, another angel has committed 100,000, and you're looking to raise the rest of the round. You can then do an outreach to a targeted investor that you know invests in this sector that you're in. You can actually even do a bit more research around the other businesses that they have invested in to see the patterns of their existing portfolio. And so when you make your outreach, you're saying, yes, this is who we are, this is the sector we operate in, we notice that you invest in this sector and there are a few other portfolio companies of yours that complement what we do and we can add a lot of value to. We're currently raising a 1 million round. We've already secured 500,000 from this investor and that investor. And having read your profile, we believe that it will be a great match if you were to invest in us because blah, 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 blah. What you would have done by such a narrative is indicate that, number one, you've done a bit of homework on them. Number two, you have even gone as far as identifying how you, as a portfolio business, add value to the rest of their portfolio. But also, more importantly, other investors are interested. There's, generally speaking, a herd mentality that works in the investment world, right? Because the investors then begin to believe, oh, if those guys are interested and have made a commitment already, they've probably seen something here. Let's take a look at it. Cold outreaches work when it's well calibrated, and that's the point here. The last point I'm going to make is around executing the fundraise. If you've prepared yourself, you've made sure that you have the right fit with investors and whatnot, how do you then make sure that as you go out to market, you do it in the best way possible? Well, the first point is this: start before you need to. Don't wait till you are absolutely out of money before you begin your fundraising journey. In fact, if you think that based on some of the things that we've talked about today, it's going to take you 3 months to get ready, begin to network with investors now. Why is this important? Because the conversation is easier when there is no pressure. Like there are a couple of investors in this room today. If you were networking with investors and you're not raising capital, you can learn about them and have a conversation around, oh, interesting. How long have you guys been investing in this sector? Great. What are your other portfolio companies? Great. They will tell you. There is no pressure. But if you're raising capital, chances are there's so much pressure that you're not even going to be asking the investors, what are your other portfolio companies? Where are you in your fund life cycle? Those kind of conversations, investors, you're generally not going to be mentally aware enough to want to ask if the pressure is on, because then you're already in sales mode. You are in, help us, let's get your money into our business. But if that pressure isn't there yet, you can begin to do your research, speak to investors, build that relationship gradually. And you can very easily say to them, oh, this is what we're doing. So you talk about the vision. We're not actively fundraising now, but we might be there 6 months down the road. Is it okay to get in touch if we do get to that point? And people are generally nice. They will tell you, yeah, sure, no worries. Feel free to get in touch. And that's your golden ticket, because then when you're all prepared and all ready, you can make the outreaches accordingly. Does that make sense? This has been helpful thus far. Cool. The other thing to mention in the execution phase is you want to be sequential in how you do your outreaches. Why is this important? Because it helps you track conversations. A lot of people can relate to this. Networking is great. We meet great people, but not a lot of people follow up. It all falls down in the follow-up, right? And it's the same thing with investing. You can reach out to 100 investors, but if you do that all at once, what begins to happen is you start missing emails, things fall through the cracks. So you want to be very careful. Sequencing 10 emails a week, 20 emails a week to investors, whatever works for you. But just make sure that you're able to sequence it in such a way that enables you to track it. And more importantly is responsiveness. This is the point I was making earlier about drip feeding information. You cannot drip feed information to investors. That is sending documents in a piecemeal fashion, one after the other. What you want to have is a simple link that investors can click on and they see the entirety of your deal room in terms of all the documents that they need to make a decision. So responsiveness, when they send you emails, you want to respond as quickly as you can because, again, time kills deals. If you're not responsive, you possibly will lose out on certain opportunities. And the third point around executing is, as much as you can, get a professional team, right? Here's why. At the very least, right, if you're going to be engaging with an investor, especially if you're going to be engaging at the VC level, they are going to be coming to you with a professional team. So at least you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in the best position possible. And by the way, we talk about professional team. There's so many professionals that can help you in the world of fundraising. But fundamentally, even if you don't get any other professional, you will need a lawyer, right? And trust me, there's a lot of them in this room, right? Fundraising. There are lawyers with fundraising expertise, commercial expertise, and whatnot. You are at the very least going to need a legal practitioner that can look after your interest in the negotiation because there are going to be term sheets to negotiate. Oh, by the way, I should mention very quickly on term sheets. It's not so much about how much you raise. It's about what's written in the term sheets. If you want a book recommendation, if you're a founder and you want to understand term sheets, go buy a book called Secrets of Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road is that place in Silicon Valley where most VCs are on. Secrets of Sand Hill Road, Sandhill. That book literally goes deep into the terms and conditions that VCs would generally put into their deals and how you can be aware of them so that you don't literally give away the entirety of your business without knowing or make mistakes around governance and things of that nature. Very, very good book. I cannot recommend it enough. So yeah, if you need to use a professional team, please use a professional team. And I think, yeah, that's the next slide. Speaking of professional team, my work on a day-to-day basis is working with founders to raise capital. So this next slide is pretty much going to be me, the entrepreneur, staying true to myself and taking 5 minutes to tell you about the work that we do. Do I have your permission to do that? Fabulous. Thank you. You have a question? No. Okay, cool. You were just giving me permission, so thank you very much. Okay, great. I lead a company called Pitch Hub, and essentially what we do is we help businesses raise capital. There are three primary ways we do that. Number one is fundraising consulting, which is where we work with founders that are looking to raise capital and help them through the entirety of the journey. And when I mean the entirety, I mean everything. So we work with founders to define their growth strategy, to figure out how much money they're raising, at what valuation, what investors to reach out to. Again, we've got a network of investors that we work with. We prepare their pitch decks, their financial models, their deal room, all of that. And when they're ready, we introduce them to investors. When they're having conversations with those investors, we prep them, have prep meetings just to make sure that their storytelling is tight and whatnot. After the sessions, we have debriefs. And we continue to provide that ongoing support until such a time as when they raise capital. The second way we do that is through programs. So we do a lot of program designs and delivery for investment readiness to organizations and government. Some of the clients we've worked with, PwC, Alika Bank, Foundervine, a number of Aston University as well. We deliver a number of sessions at Aston University. So generally speaking, programs, workshops, masterclasses, we do a whole lot of that. And the one that I'm very, very excited about, so we've got a number of digital platforms. So currently as a company, we've got 4 digital platforms. The 4th one is not out just yet. It's going to be out next week. 2 of them are assessment tools. But one of them I want to talk to you about today because it literally just dropped last Friday. So we've got this product called Vanello. And Vanello essentially is an investment readiness tool. So it's a fundraising assistant, literally. These are some of the things it would help you do. Fundamentally, there's an investability rating embedded within it, which is you answer a number of questions and it will tell you how investable your business is from an investor's perspective based on the viability of your opportunity, the viability of your business, the size of your opportunity, and the credibility of your team. Then there's a feature in there that enables you to compute your valuation using some of the most respected valuation methodologies of the market. You also get access to an investor database. The current database, I think there are 1,500 angels and VCs that are on there. For the angels, you get their LinkedIn profile, so you can literally click on it and it takes you straight to their LinkedIn. For the VCs, it takes you straight to their website. And this is angels and VCs from about, I think, 25 countries currently. So you get all of that in there. It also helps you prepare for due diligence. So there's a due diligence feature where all the core documents that you need to have ready, you can manage it there. You can use it as well to manage your deal room and whatnot. And you could also get professional help if you need help with any other thing along your fundraise. They literally just sent this to me. So the developer just made this live on Friday. So I'm really excited about it. Even as a team, we haven't had time to completely test it internally. So if you are a founder here and you like to play with it, that's the QR code. If you scan that, I should also mention that the version that is live now is a web version, so it might not calibrate well on your mobile, but if you log on it on the web, it's going to do a great job. You can start for free. You can run some of the assessments for free, but there's some features on there that are paid features and £69. So yeah, please play with Vanello. Like I said, it only just went live, so if you spot any bugs, feel free to send me an email. I would really, really appreciate that. But yeah, that's about it. To wrap up this session, and before we move on to the panel, perfect timing, Davies, well done, is this point I want to make. There are lots of founders that are looking to raise capital. There are also lots of investors that are looking to deploy capital. What you're looking for is looking for you. Ultimately, for founders in the room, the challenge that you have is to make sure that you develop a proposition that is solid enough for an investor to be interested. Deals are still being done, right? This year, we've helped a number of founders fundraise. One of the founders that we started working with just last month, they've got a number of, at least about 4 or 5 serious investor conversations ongoing. So there are deals to be made. You just have to do your homework. And we can tell ourselves a lot of stories around what's not going right in the macro environment. But ultimately, if your business is right, if you've got the right validation and you put your proposition together quite nicely, there is money out there that is looking for you. Anyways, with that, I would like to say thank you very much for the gift of your attention. The panel that we're getting into now is your opportunity to ask questions. So we call it troubleshooting the raise, right? And the whole idea is if you're raising capital, we've got a range of experts in the room. The whole idea that literally work on fundraising. So generally speaking, from a founder perspective, what are the things you see founders do that just will not help them raise?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's when a founder is fundraising, the common mistake that I see is the lack of preparation and investment readiness when it gets to me. Now, what I mean by that is that they lack the clarity of the ask and why. Now, the best founders that do go to raise equity with us or other institutions, they can really clearly articulate what they're doing and why they're doing it. They can answer questions such as, why now? So why is this the current right time to do something? Is it regulation or is it other macroeconomic factors? Why them? What capabilities have you got to provide a distinct advantage in the market? And most importantly, which I think you alluded to, was, what makes you venture worthy? How are you going to scale this business to get from A to B to C to D in order to provide me, your institutional investor, its capital and its returns back, but also angel investors and your other stakeholders?
Awesome.
Hi, just to introduce myself further, so I'm Vernon Hogg. I deliver the Founders Collective programme for Oxford Innovation Advice, who's currently contracted with the West Midlands Combined Authority. So I work on the investment readiness for the region, for founders for Birmingham, Solihull and Black Country region. The biggest mistake I find with founders is they try to raise far too early. They haven't really done the groundwork or the legwork. Many aren't at MVP, but they're trying to raise funding to get to MVP stage, which is massively difficult. You need to do the legwork. You need to find out what is out there that could make my proposition work early. How can I get some early traction, get some early revenues into the business? So I see that quite a lot happening. And also about, as Davies has already presented in terms of when they do go to link with investors, they're just linking with all the wrong ones. Sadly, here in Birmingham, we haven't got many investors. So a lot of early stage founders go straight to VCs like Jordan, who advises, him and his team advises so well for founders, but they're just not ready for VC investment. It really should be much earlier stage and angel. So they're the biggest mistakes that I find. I think also about it's a bit fashionable to raise cash. If somebody else is raising cash, I best raise some as well. And should I jump on the bandwagon of doing that and think, well, why aren't I getting invested either? So we all then moan and complain, nothing's working, and we all blame Birmingham. It's not about Birmingham. It's about the founders. Yeah. So go back and check on yourself in terms of, am I ready? Is my proposition good enough? Have I got traction? Have I got feedback? And just making sure as well, you're not working on product to death. We see many founders that work on product, but they haven't actually spoken to any customers to find out will anybody buy it or use what it is they're trying to put together.
Awesome. Thank you, Vernon.
Thanks. So, does this even work?
No, I don't think
No.
it
Yeah.
just great.
No, it works. It works.
Does it?
Right.
Okay.
It's not
some sort
audio
of joke.
boom to the room.
No.
It's to the camera.
It's hard going last because all the best answers get taken. Just very quick introduction. I'm Sam Micklejohn. I'm a partner here at Gately, and I've never described myself as a fundraising lawyer before, but that's probably exactly what I am. I do a lot of public company work, so list companies on the stock exchange. But over the last sort of 8 years, I've worked more and more with founders and startups and do all sorts of fundraising, from angel investors through to seed, series rounds. And that's, to be frank, where I really get the most enjoyment from what I do, working with founders and innovative companies right at the start. What do founders typically do wrong, or what mistakes they make? Agree with everything that's just been said. Purely from a legal perspective, I would say two things. One is not being prepared for due diligence. There's nothing worse than when you do get some interest from an investor and that investor lifts up the bonnet and everything's a complete mess. There are really good housekeeping practices that anyone can get into no matter what stage you're in. Filing your own records in a folder, setting up an organised data room when the time comes, keeping your company's house filings up to date is a really easy thing to do. Whether you talk to lawyers about that or corporate secretarial providers about that, minimal cost. It's just something that will save you a lot of time and hassle. The other thing I would say, even before due diligence, is a really common mistake that founders can make is negotiating the term sheet themselves before coming to lawyers. That's definitely not a plug to come and use lawyers as early as possible, but you'd be surprised the number of times where we're approached by a founder and they say, look, we've got some interest from investors, here's a signed term sheet. Whilst term sheets are non-binding, they're not legally binding documents, once it's down on the page and signed, it's very, very difficult to deviate from what has been agreed in principle with investors. Also, and I appreciate that most founders these days are incredibly well versed in this stuff. There's a lot of information out there. People like Davies and Vernon, Jordan, there's a lot of info there. But what sometimes you miss if you're negotiating a term sheet yourself is developments in the legal market, developments in terms of how a particular term's evolving in the local market or in the sector market that your business might be in. So I would say get advisors on board before you start signing and negotiating a term sheet. Term sheet stage is where you're going to have the most leverage before things are written down. So bear that one in mind. I would say that's a mistake that I see fairly often.
Thank you so much, sir. I've got questions. Yeah, who will be able to cut? Yes, sir.
This is something that we see lots. And to be clear, I'm conscious there are universities in the room, so this is very politically neutral. Once upon a time, universities used to completely understandably take a large chunk of equity, 45% at times, right? A number of years ago, the government published guidance which effectively gave a ballpark figure, sort of between 10 and 25% as a typical university stake. Pre-investment, that stake would then be diluted. You'd expect universities to take ordinary shares, so fully dilutable. And then all arrangements to do with intellectual property and other things are negotiated in agreements behind the scenes, right? A common mistake that some founders make even before investment is at spin out where the university gets, dare I say, too much equity. And I'm not saying that that's equity that the university doesn't deserve. That's not the point of the comment. The comment is that that could then be off-putting to a potential investor. So both the university and the founder could be doing themselves a slight disservice by not agreeing that up front. Moving on from a spin-out stage, often you might see an investor giving up too many operational board rights when it comes to what they allow the incoming investor to have on the board, whether that's one board seat, two board seats, depending on the number of investors coming in, board observer rights. Most investors, and Jordan will keep me honest here, will take preference shares when investing into a company, so not ordinary shares. Those shares will invite different rights to ordinary shares, rights on liquidation, rights in terms of paying out dividends, distributions. Getting those wrong is common. Not wrong, but agreeing in a term sheet and then having lawyers come in and having to undo that. So lots of different things. Founder warranties, for example, company warranties, lots of different things.
And I want Jordan to weigh in a bit on that as well, because particularly when you're dealing with things like university spin-outs, so I've seen instances where, in this case, it wasn't even just the equity, but it was the IP for what they were doing belonged to the university and didn't belong to the founder and whatnot. Generally speaking, how do you navigate those kind of challenges when founders are raising?
Yes, when investing into a company, obviously we want the IP to sit with the company rather than university. And one of the biggest things for us and even the team is incentivization. You know, at the end of the day, as a founder, you deserve a lot of the equity. You're going to be diluted across many different rounds as you progress and grow. So it's very important for me to understand that you are motivated and you're incentivized in this business. One way to handle universities, you can issue a load of options and dilute them. At the same time, dilute all your stakeholders, but it's not ideal. It can create tension. I'm going to be completely honest about it. And again, the other, critical factors, you talked about preferences. Are you participating or non-participating? I think as a founder, you always want to seek for non-participating capital. That way you have more, of the return when you do exit.
So, quick question. Who doesn't understand participating and non-participating? Okay, who understands it? Okay, if you don't understand it, go buy that book I recommended. It's in there, right? It talks about all those terms. Have you got any other questions? Yeah, go for it, ma'am.
Hi, this will be quite short. Hi, my name is Sharon, and my questions for quite literally anyone. I'm a founder, and I find myself quite stumped in the whole building tech world. I've come from, GRC world, and now I'm talking all tech and
What is GRC?
governance, risk, and compliance.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And now I'm talking all this lovely jargon that you guys are talking, and something you said that people say again and again, and all designers now, is don't start too early. But then don't start too late. Don't waste too much time. So what is that sweet spot between don't start too early and don't waste too much time?
The sweet spot is to join one of our Founders Collective programs and we get you ready. And it's fully funded, by the way. It's fully funded by the Combined Authority, so please come and join. Now, effectively, it's a case of, when we say too early, it's a founder will arrive at me either virtually or we meet face-to-face here in Birmingham. And for the very first time, I'll look at what it is they've put together. They have I feel, a great idea. They're a very credible founder. This is going to be a great conversation. But as soon as we start to look at what they have around them with their pitch decks, the quality, the standard, what they look like for engagement with an investor is just not there. That needs to be really well sorted out, because again, going back to Davies' presentation, pitch deck is to get that level of interest. It's not to get the funding, it's to get the interest to get funding down the line. I think the other difficulty is as well where founders in terms, they think they are ready but don't totally know their market or their specific niche. The market is global. I'm going to get this locally first. I'm going to get it to work in UK before I go out of UK. And I think the understanding in terms of who is their product or their service to serve within that marketplace. What is their niche? Is it an age category? Is it particular income earners? What is it they're actually trying to get to get their proposition to work and make profit? When I start having all of these conversations with founders, they're like, oh, I haven't got a clue. Where do I start? What's it look like? Where do I go to get it? And that's but the whole educational process of getting ready for investment is all of that. And that whole go-to-market strategy, like, I'm going to appoint a marketing agency with the funding, and investors are like, oh my God, they fall off the chair. They're just like, the last thing you want to say to an investor is, I'm going to employ a marketing, oh, there's no marketing agencies in the room, but I'm going to employ a marketing agency. They quoted me $8,500 a month plus VAT, and I'm going to have them for 6 months. They're going to do the whole thing for me. And I'll say to the founder, in other words, you just don't know what you're doing. And they say, no, I don't. I've got no idea with marketing at all. So again, you've got to educate yourself. In that whole getting readiness, you need to know the basics and more of most things that's going to happen in your business. And when you don't have all the education and knowledge, get some experts in, free people, advisors, freebies. There's a lot of organisations within Birmingham that are massively helpful to get founders on their way and get them started on that learning journey. So I hope that answers your question.
Can I just add one
Yes.
thing to that? I think you'll intuitively know, depending on what level your business is at, and maybe more to the point how much cash you need, what steps to take along the journey at what moment in time. So if you're looking at your business, it's a bit like Davies was mentioning earlier about having a growth strategy and money being for a growth strategy. If I just created a business tomorrow and somebody said, well, how much money do you need? I'd be like, well, what am I doing and how long do I need to do it? If you think, well, actually, for the moment, the amount of money that I need, I could probably get that from friends and family, inverted commas, so individuals. Actually, if I need a bit more money than that, I think I'm going to be looking at business angels, so high net worth individuals, again, which people around here can have networks, point you in the right direction. And then when your business gets to the stage where you actually know that you're needing a certain amount of capital, let's just call it, £1.5 million pounds or dollars, whatever, then immediately you know that you're then into sort of seed VC territory. So it's not, I think there are certain sums of money or quantum of capital that may give you a guide as to when to start getting ready and who to approach, if that makes sense. It's only a rule of thumb, but it might help quantify things in your head as to a roadmap.
Awesome. And just to add very quickly to that as well, following on from what Sam has just said, one of the things that's very crucial to your readiness is actually knowing the right type of capital to go for. Because sometimes the thing that you actually need money for is a short-term need. And you don't want to use long-term capital to fund short-term needs. Neither do you want to use short-term capital to fund long-term needs. There are also capital mixes, capital structure, debt and equity, venture debt, ASA, things of that nature. So different types of capital are suited for different types of purposes. So what Vernon was talking about earlier in terms of the whole education is very important. You probably must have heard it said that fundraising is almost like a full-time job in itself. And the reason why it is that way is because for a lot of founders, they are coming across all these terms and it's all just hitting them in the face. What you want to do first, once you get to that point where you go, I think we're going to be needing some capital, is actually to, as best as you can, educate yourself around the fundraising process, what investors are looking for, what capital types are out there and whatnot. Once you begin to do a lot of that work, to Sam's point, it begins to become clear to you because you can then identify yourself and your business in the grand scheme of things. Hope that helps.
Yes, it does.
You're welcome.
Just one final point of that as well, where early stage founder conversations where I need 250,000 to do what and what to achieve. We can end the conversation within probably a week, 10 days that you don't actually need any of that first ask, because there's things out there that you could link up with. I can put you in touch with the right people within the ecosystem of Birmingham and region in terms of what is out there for you that's completely funded. There's such things as startup loans to get grit in the game, take on board some debt, get some revenue, get some traction, build your model. So it's all those kind of conversations that we would have in the very, very early stages of our engagement.
Awesome.
Quick question for Vernon. You keep mentioning Birmingham, and I feel so isolated. I came here all the way from Milton Keynes, so I feel like it's very hard to sit with us. Is this solely for people who are based in Birmingham?
There's lots of co-working addresses you can have in Birmingham. So, but I didn't say that. Yes.
Well, point is, I think, so for the work that Vernon does with Oxford Innovation Advice and the Combined Authority, there are always, similar programs like that across multiple, locations across the UK. So that's one thing to think about. But the other thing as well to think about is we do a lot of educational pieces, but we can have a conversation later and I can point you to a few more resources that might be helpful. Actually, the number of networks that we've got, so I don't know if you're plugged into the NatWest Accelerator in Milton Keynes. I'm actually doing a session there sometime next month, but Innovate UK, exactly. Innovate UK is very present there. So there's a lot. The more you begin to look, the more you find, pretty much. Great. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, we recently completed an IP audit, personally funded by a friend from Innovate UK Business Pro. Thank you very much. Question I have regarding that IP audit is that something that you would put into your data room? And if we do, what are investors really looking to see in this IP audit? What's the reaction?
Yeah, I think whatever information you have, you should be able to put into your data room, including what sort of IP and patents that you do hold. Now, I put allocation towards IP depending on what type of sector you're in. So if you're a deep tech company or if you're a med tech, life sciences, I'm going to be looking at the IP you hold and how applicable it is globally. But yeah, from my stage, what I invest in, I'm not too focused on that. I'm more focused on what sort of traction markers you have already, the team that you have built, and where you're going and where's the vision. I don't know if you can add anything onto that.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, the only thing I would add, so I agree with Jordan on all those points, is first of all, I'd encourage any company to put what they deem to be material documents into a data room. I would always assume that information relating to IP, again, slight caveat depending on the business, would be a material document or at least something that an investor would expect to see. I think you can take comfort in the fact that you will have, I hope, entered into an NDA, so a confidentiality agreement, so that what's in that data room is confidential. It's not like you're plastering it all over the internet. But I would take it on a case-by-case basis. I don't know whether maybe this is one for Jordan, whether you'd expect to get, would a VC at data room stage, would you sort of send over a rough list of documents that you'd expect to see?
Yeah, I tend to send out an information request.
Yeah.
If I've not received the data room in the first meeting. But preferably, I'd rather you have that data room ready for the first initial meeting so I can review it before I have a call with you. And I think the way a founder carries out the fundraising journey is a good signal to how they carry out their business.
Sure.
Are they decisive or not? Do they prepare? Not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I certainly would put IP in there.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to sit here and say, you don't need to put the results of your IP audit into the data room. I would work on the other way around.
Yeah.
You would.
I think the addition I will make to that is if you are, so for example, if one of the things you're raising capital for is to able to progress your IP potential into an actual patent, meaning you're going to be saying to the investors, oh, part of your money is going to be used to secure a patent, for example, which you're going to need to spend a chunk of money for, then definitely your IP audit will be very relevant to that conversation. in that instance. But outside of that, everything that the panelists have said, I would strongly abide by. Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Two quick comments. Firstly, I agree with everything Davies said before about when we're looking at companies that are likely to be the future unicorns. I was asked this week by a Department of Business and Trade to name unicorns of the West Midlands. It's the way they speak and the ambition they have for being big. So even if you're a startup, if you have that big ambition, you set the pathway to get there. It really helps you. And it changes the wording and language you use. Secondly, just backing up Sarah, when I had my startup, the legal documents that we had from a law firm actually saved our business in many ways, especially when my co-founder left and other things. Don't be shy. They don't charge as much as you think for startups, and it's something that's absolutely vital. They give you a whole folder, even with a CV. Totally recommend that. Now to the real question. I'm often with investors, and it's quite funny sometimes when people come up and people will ask for money, and they'll say, look, if you ask for advice, I might have given you money, but you asked for money, so I'm going to give you advice. How much of that is true, and how much of that is just they can't be bothered to talk about?
I think it depends on where you're networking and the people you're meeting. I think it's a case of being in all the right places to get the proper engaged conversations you need to have. In terms of advisory in the region, there's lots of great people doing great work. Yourselves, Innovate UK, you've got the growth hubs, you've got Oxford Innovations, Independence as far as Davies. And I think I don't like the fact that people go straight in and it's a charge and it's hourly rates and everything else. I don't think it's a great way to start a relationship. I think, I understand from founders when they say to me, oh, well, I'm going to pay an advisor, I'm going to onboard a person, I'm going to stay with them for some time, I've met this person, they sound great. And I'm like, who are they? What do they do? What's their background? And what are they going to be charging you and what they're actually going to be giving you that could be really given as funded support. And I think the difficult thing is as well where in an early stage business, that advisor might be suitable at that point, but they might not be once they've got investment and on that next level stage. Mm-hmm. But the advisors they might be sat there with shared equity or sweat equity, as they call it, and you think, what am I going to do to get rid of them? And it just complicates the matter. So people can outgrow a business as it gets to different stages as well, really.
Awesome. Any other person wants to weigh on that?
No, I was just thinking about the point you just made then. It's hard to get rid of them. Yeah. And when you do try and get rid of them, there's a bunch of SEIS and EIS complications for the rest of your stakeholders. Yeah. So really
keep it clean.
Yeah, keep your cap table clean and really choose who you want on board wisely.
Yeah, and I think one thing to emphasize there to founders in the room, I say this every time I'm doing workshops for founders. Fundraising, you want to be very, very careful because raising equity capital is the closest thing there is to marriage, right? If you've got an equity investor in your business or somebody that holds equity in your cap table, you want to kick them out. They don't want to leave. It could be as messy as a divorce. So you want to be very, very careful about who you bring on board and the relationships and whatnot.
I think that's a really good point. Just going to some recent examples. I'm not sure what stage the various businesses in the room are at, but often, when you're a startup, you might not have much cash available, right? You might be pre-revenue, and actually going back to one of the points Davies was saying earlier about getting a good team around you, that team might involve you. You might have met somebody who you think, they'd be a really good chief technical officer or a really good commercial director. I'm going to get them on board. Actually, what can I pay them? I can't offer them a market-leading salary. What do I do? Now that's when that point that Jordan made and Davies touched on becomes really important. And again, this is definitely not a plug for lawyers, but it definitely is. You should get lawyers involved because these are the sorts of things that can really come back to bite you if you get that structuring wrong. For a number of reasons, if I'm just on my own, I'm a founder, I think the business is going to go somewhere, I've met somebody, professional networking event, I'm going to onboard them as a commercial director. Well, how do I do that? Do I give them a bunch of shares? Do I give them 10% of the business straight away as in almost like a co-founder way? If I do that, one, I've just given up 10% of the voting rights in the business without them doing a thing in the company. Also, from their perspective, that might be highly tax inefficient. They might not know that. Do I structure it or do I use an option scheme? Right, they become an employee, they qualify for EMI options, which we don't have time to go into now, but you have a vesting schedule, and actually that allows them to achieve equity ownership over the mid to long term, which matches up with the sort of emotional incentivization schedule that I imagine you were envisaging as the founder when this new team member comes on board. But again, it's just an example of an issue that you might not think about until you're on the verge of being in that moment. So onboarding advisors, relatively soon to think about these things, I think is important, because issues can come up at any moment, and the quicker that we spot those issues, the quicker that they're dealt with, it just makes it much easier in the long term.
Yeah, and I think that Vernon and I worked with a founder that was raising capital, and there was an instance where, Vernon, you can speak to this, there was an instance where they got the term sheet over, and basically the investor was going to take over, I think it was about 70% of the shareholding, even though the deal was for about, I think, 20-30%, but then the founders would have to earn back the shares and whatnot. Vernon, do you want to talk about that and the importance of, because Vernon was the one who spotted that actually when it was reviewing the term sheet.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think I'm going to hand back to Sam, because we had this question raised at our Founders Collective last Thursday about term sheets coming across where the founders lose all of their shares upon when that investment comes in. But you were saying it's about security and keeping people within the business. It's a case of earn them back, because we're not going to put all our cash in risking into your business if you're going to quickly exit, or it's gone wrong and I'm down the road and it's you that loses the cash and I'm not there anymore. But Sam, a little bit more of an opinion on that would be great.
I think it just, again, it plays to the point of setting out your red lines early, and especially if you're the founder and we're acting for a founder, we need to think about, okay, well, how much operational control do you need in the short term over the business? Why do you need the capital? The way that incentivization is structured can take so many different forms, especially at founder level. It all plays to things like good leaver, bad leaver, making sure the right protections are in place for the investor. But again, not to keep banging on about this point, these are just all things that people don't think about until it's too late. And incentivization is something that, again, there's plenty of lawyers out there who specialize in exactly this. This sort of structuring. So as a general point, it's another one to sort of keep in your mind to think about on the run up to fundraise, on the run up to onboarding a co-founder or a commercial director or a technical officer, whoever. So awesome. I think it's really important.
Before I come back to the questions from the audience, Jordan, I wanted to speak to the subject matter of speed and the things that get a deal over the line really quickly. First of all, what is the fastest you've seen a deal done? And in that instance, if you could tell us, what were the things that founder brought to the table that literally accelerated things?
Yeah, I think first, it depends, are you raising from an institution or an angel investor? Yeah. Now, quite recently on a deal that I am working on, I've seen an angel investor commit 300,000 via an ASA after only meeting the founder probably twice, so in the first 2-3 weeks, which is a crazy amount of money. But from an institution, and talking from personal experience, the process is roughly 12 weeks minimum, up to several months, and it goes back to how investment ready you are as a founder. Now, the things that you can do to speed up that process is first, one, you don't need to go out and reach to 100 different investors initially. Go identify the 10 that align with you, understand what you do, rather than trying to focus and convincing the other 90 who don't have a clue what you guys do. Second thing, data room, make sure you have a clean cap table. That has been a major blocker for many investments I've done quite recently. If you don't have all your conversions done for your ASAs or your convertible loan notes, if you don't really know what the waterfall looks like or your dilution, it can get very messy. So please focus on that before you go speak to an institutional investor. And lastly, clarity of ask and why. Make sure you get your narrative straight before you even have your first conversation with an institution or even an angel investor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have we got other questions in the room? Yeah, go for it, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tess Barton, and I'm with the West Midlands Growth Company. So I encounter a lot of founders, a lot of companies generally. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that first check. A lot of times investors will come in after they've seen other investors take the risk initially. What would you say to kind trying to break the ceiling of that first investment, whether it's an angel, whether it's through debt, whether it's through, probably won't be institutional unless it's a first check fund like Octopus Ventures, etc. How can they break the glass ceiling on that? Because I think there's a lack of that in the region generally. What advice would you give to founders? And then I have a second question after that.
Yeah. So it'd be great if we did have more startup capital for early stage companies, especially pre-revenue. I completely agree. I sympathise. I understand it. You know, even with my fund now, we can only invest in companies with traction over 100,000 per annum, and that makes it difficult to give, especially people like yourself. I think the one thing that you can do is again work on your narrative. What story are you going to tell? When you do speak to angels or even institutions to raise that first capital check, what are the critical things that you need to achieve over the next several 18 months, milestones, in order to prove that you can create value for that investor? Because at the end of the day, it tends to be people. It's a people business. You need to capture hearts and minds. At the same time, if you can demonstrate to me and I can believe that you can create that value, you have the expertise, the skills, the team around you, I'm going to invest in you as well as that great product or service.
Awesome. Werner?
Great question. I think early stage founders take any money that's going, sadly. It's money. Without really realising sometimes what they're actually getting into. And I think at the outset, what does this business actually want to do and where is it aiming to be? There are many founders that I work with that are relevant for VC investment and not angel. And I think it's about an understanding where, going back to that sort of like fear of missing out, where I work very closely with some founders in terms of getting their investment raise, and the whole sort of fear of missing out happens. Suddenly, emails come in from nowhere thinking, well, someone I believe is raising, how come you haven't sent me the deck for this founder? And it can just go on and on and on, and it just confuses things. And I think what you don't want to do for early stage business is make it messy, as we've just said in the earlier conversation. What is your aim? What is the business? What's the business opportunity and its size? Is it UK? Is it global? Is it going to go off the Richter scale? Or is it going to be a business where everybody's happy, we're employing a certain amount of people, we're making cash and we're all happy, and it doesn't need to grow any further? So it's all about what is relevant in the early stage proposition. But the educational process in terms of, I have founders that have got people who put 10,000 in, 5,000 in, 12,000 in, we've got a startup loan, and it just gets really quite messy. But I understand what they're trying to do, but when we get to that bigger level picture in terms, once we start pitching to a VC, it's like, oh, what are we going to do with all these people? What, you know, how's it all going to work? So initial outset, the focus in terms of where is the aim, and having the right conversations with the founder in terms of to determine the financials, the pitch deck, the opportunity, how big can this be?
Awesome. Sam, do you want to weigh on that?
I don't think I've got anything helpful to say to that question beyond what these two have already said. All I would say is, when you asked the question, my mind immediately went back to something we touched on earlier, which was the type of funding, so the type of instrument.
Yep.
So when we talk about first raise, what do we mean by raise? Do we mean the first opportunity this business has in its life where it sort of needs cash? Are we then thinking of things like government grants? Because are there grants we can apply for? Is that the aim here? Is the aim to just get cash to achieve a short-term goal? Do we then stray into the world of, well, okay, we're now talking about bank loans from banks who have the innovation programs. These days, even if a company is very early and it doesn't have any assets, physical assets, tangible assets, intellectual property can be used with some banks as security against loans. So it's much easier for startups to get loans. And then you're into the realms, or are we actually talking about equity? And then we sort of have to make a decision between, well, how much do we need? We talk about angels or VCs. But I think I imagined the company that you were talking about, if it gets to the stage where it needs money. I think that's something I mentioned earlier. Well, how much money are we talking about? Once we know how much money we're talking about, right? Not too big, not too small. Once we know how much money, we can be a lot clearer about what particular instrument or method is the best way.
And I think that just double clicking on that, there are quite a number of, getting into specifics for that first ticket. There are quite a number of tools and instruments that exist out there in the market today that are very, very beneficial. And a number of the founders that we've even helped to raise have used those instruments. So first, again, first ticket, just like Sam has said, how much is always the first question. But for example, there's an SME grant that I know is deployed by the Birmingham City Council where businesses can get, a chunk of money. It's match funded, but that's the nature of that. There are lots and lots of different Innovate UK opportunities that could serve as first money in. Actually, a number of the clients that we've worked with, one of the things that investors found very interesting about their business that got investors interested is that they had got an Innovate UK grant, right? Because that for them was like, oh, this is a great stamp of approval. So they're keeping an eye on Innovate UK opportunities, Innovation Funding Service. If you type that into Google, it goes to the page where Innovate UK posts all this stuff. That's another one. Startup loans is another one, which is the one loan that is in the market for startups. Literally no collateral, the only thing they ask you for is a business plan and the cash flow projection, right? So long as you've got a business plan and cash flow projection, you could get up to £25,000 for one director and up to 4 directors, meaning the maximum a business can get is 100,000, and that is a lot of money for any first ticket into a business. And then last but not least, I mentioned it during the keynote, warm introductions, right? Because if you're thinking about the first ticket into a business, particularly equity, then we're most likely going to be thinking about angel investors, not necessarily VCs. And with angels, warm introductions are very, very crucial. So those are some of the tools you want to think about when you go to market. Your second question.
A little bit on how important is storytelling versus traction in those first stages.
Did you say storytelling versus traction?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'm a huge advocate of storytelling because, as Davies was saying before, when they go through a pitch deck and average 2.3 minutes, they're totally judging the whole proposition on what their pitch deck is saying. So the founder hasn't introduced himself, why they are so amazing, where have they been, what have they done, why are they here now? And I'm a huge advocate of that. I think it's a very big missed opportunity. And I'm actually starting to re-educate myself now in terms of the pitch deck. Rather than starting with a problem, here is me and my story. Because do you know what? I get to meet the most amazing founders, which is just wonderful to hear from them and meet them because they become friends for life, not just an opportunity to get them funded. Where they've been and what they've done and how they've got there is just absolutely just outstanding at times. And what we mustn't do is ever miss that opportunity with the most amazing people. So I'm a huge fan of storytelling.
Cool. I will follow up on that simply because, which is why I was clarifying. Did you say storytelling versus traction? It's not a versus question. Both of those variables are very important. Storytelling is very essential because, first of all, investors need to see in you the person that they're investing in. So let me say another way. If you cannot convince an investor about your vision, the investor presumes you cannot convince a customer about your vision, right? So the way you communicate your proposition, the narrative, how you weave everything together, very, very important. So my point here is storytelling is a very essential bit, but it doesn't come at the expense of traction, right? Because whatever you do, sales shuts everybody up, right? If the investors go, do you watch Shark Tank, by the way? Anybody watch Shark Tank or Dragons Den? Many instances, founders will come on there and go, oh, we're building this new little nice product, and immediately they start scoffing. This happens more on Shark Tank than Dragons Den. They start scoffing and going, nobody's going to buy that, no, and then they go, we've been running for the last 13 months and we've made 4.2 million in sales, and everybody goes, whoa. Sales, nobody argues with sales. So and the reason why I'm emphasizing this point is it's easy for founders to hold on to the things that are embellishments and lose track of the core. We don't want to lose track of the core. So long as you keep doing whatever you can to build your business. And by the way, traction is not just sales, just to emphasize. It is product development, it is IP, it is, expressions of interest, it is waiting list, it is signed contracts and agreement. You don't want to lose track of that. So storytelling is great, but whatever it is that you can do to continually push your business forward regardless, please keep doing that. Never let go of that. That's very important. You have another question? Yes, sir. Go for it.
I'm just wondering, perhaps avoiding a forced liquidation event, what kind of advice or any case stories do you have that you could have maybe elucidate that, just discussing that kind of general advice?
Yeah, had a very recent case of this. I took on board personally one founder's investment journey, and I have been working with him nearly 12 months now. And we got to a stage where he built his MVP, and I always found it extremely complicated. And I'm not a tech, I'm old. I don't get tech that much, but I have to sort of well, if the founder knows it, that's great. I'm just trying to find you the cash to get funding. So if they know what they're doing, that's absolutely fine, but it was complicated. We invited this particular founder in to come and deliver on our cohorts and things as well. And founders in the room excited, but when they come to use it, we just lost the room. It became quite difficult. So I took on board that this founder's an AI founder, so he's pre-revenue, so hasn't got any clients. And it was an interesting one because I thought, well, I'm going to have a look to see where can we go with this particular case and what can we do with it. So I'm going to go against the grain to what Davies said. You go to the first 10 people. We did 10 per week. We got to 50, and not a lot was happening. There's awful platforms where you upload the pitch deck and you hear nothing, and it was complete silence. I think just one or two came back saying, no, not for us. And I'm a huge LinkedIn fan. I just live on it. I don't sleep. Again, I'm old. You don't sleep when you're old. It's great. You can get loads of work done in the night. It's a real advantage. So look forward to it, all of you. It's great when it happens. And I find out what's going on everywhere. Yeah, I find out what's going on everywhere. And there's one particular AI organization based in the States where they were doing something very similar to this founder. And they had a proposition, I think it was called Eva or Ava, and they just raised 24 million. And it's all based about the branding and the name of what they did. It's branded as a name. So following one, and got in touch with the founder. You know what? I said, we've done the first 50 outreach. It's not working. We're not getting the feedback. What can we do to change things? So we branded his product with a name. We simplified the deck. We put different things in the deck in terms of who is it we actually are wanting to onboard as clients. So we did all the deck, sent it out to the next 50 over the next 5 weeks, 10 per week. We got to the next 50, and we had 7 engagements. And we're like, wow. Because we rebranded, we changed the ask from 750 down to 400. We changed the valuation slightly, and suddenly we get an engagement. Yep. One of those engagements happened to be in UAE, which was like, wow, that's fascinating. He was invited to fly over there, and he's getting to stage now where he's going to get some funding in UAE. And we've got 3 VCs in current conversations with him as well. So it's not just what you've got now, it's if it's not working when you go out to get investment, revisit the model, change it, pivot it. What can we do differently? You end up doing the same thing, but sometimes it's the words and sometimes the understanding. Again, you said earlier, Davies, where we often get to slide 4 on a pitch deck, especially with tech, and I haven't got a clue what's going on. I go back to slide 1, and I'm like, I'll start again. Problem, solution. Am I doing this? Am I doing that? And God, I haven't got a clue. And I'll send it to Davies. Do you get it? No, Vern, I don't get it either. Yeah. And then we're like, well, we need to go back to the founder and tell him that we're just not getting this.
So yeah, to Vernon's point, a pivot around the fundraising narrative, but also to your point, pivot around the business itself, very essential. Jordan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's about seeing what else works. Say if what you're doing is not currently working, what your competitor's doing. Exactly what you said. It tends to be the messaging. Is the story easy to follow? Go back to stories. If it's not easy to follow, and I'll do a jigsaw analogy, if I'm putting the straight edges together, it can take time, and you're not going to capture the hearts and minds. So yeah, it's all about story and narrative.
Awesome. Okay.
So just to, sorry, Dave, just to add to that as well, one thing I forgot, that one particular VC we sent the deck out to, I did know them, but I let the founder upload the deck via the platform. So I thought, I'm going to message this guy and say, we sent you a deck 2-3 weeks ago. We've heard nothing from you. Oh, and I'm going, yeah, I don't think it's for us, but let me have another look. And I said, well, before you look, I said, I'll send you the updated version now. And he came back and said to me, Vernon, I've got no idea why we didn't engage with this founder. First time round, apologies, please do an introduction. And that's one of the engagements we have now. So it just goes to show, going back to being introduced and knowing the points of contact is huge. So please build your network early when you're going for investment.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're out of time, but we can take one more question. Anyone with? Okay, so we take your question and then we can move into networking. Yeah, go for it.
I want to take advantage of you guys whilst you're still here. I have one question that is specifically for Jordan.
Go for it.
How good or bad, and just bear with me, I'm just a girl here, just going off the top of my head. How good or bad is it when you're like super, super niche, and do you find that that sort of throws you guys off? Because I know all of you, capital market people, money, but sometimes you don't really understand the problem. So how important is it to sort of get super obsessed with explaining to you what it is that we're actually doing? Because oftentimes we talk to these people and they're like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about, but we control the money. So how important is that?
Yeah, it's about simplifying your narrative. How do you make it easy for me to follow? Could a 10-year-old understand what you're trying to explain? Like you said, when I'm going for a pitch deck, what I don't want to be doing, which I find myself doing more and more sometimes, is putting ChatGPT. What does this company do? Can you explain it? Because I can see there's something really.
VCs do it too.
It is. I can see there's something really interesting about it. You've got the traction markers there. It makes sense intuitively. But then I don't really know how to explain it to my directors. So, if you can explain it to me easily, so I can explain it to my directors and we'll get to investment committee, that helps massively. I don't mind pictures. It really depends what. Yeah.
Do you mind the
Yeah.
pictures like this? We do this and we do that.
Yeah, I'm dyslexic. Okay, so I'm quite a visual person.
Yeah.
As well as writing. Qualitative is fine and quantitative, but if I can visually see it and understand it, then I'm much more drawn to it.
And generally, remember I was saying to you earlier as well, the pitch deck has to be a very visual document anyway.
So I see roughly about, I want to say 1,000 decks here. It's a lot of decks, so you need to, again, capture my interest straight away, and that's exactly what you guys specialise in and everyone else in the ecosystem.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love, sorry, just to finish up, I love niche. So I'm the ADHDer in the room. I love attention to detail, and finding out when someone gives me a niche opportunity, I am all over it because I want to know what is this, what is it that you're doing, and where can I get involved because I want to learn it all. I've got a founder at the moment. I've been with him this morning for a couple of hours. Wow. I've got to go and do loads of ChatGPT tomorrow to find out what's going on because it is one I've never come across before. So it's massively interesting when I come across niche.
Nothing to add to that. If it's about pitch decks, it's quite a nice way to finish. That the closing remarks would be speak to this man who's hosting us today.
No, we'll take a question from Carolyn really quickly.
Pitch decks, actually. I was wondering when you say you get 1,000, you look at 1,000 a year. Do you go when you get one? Do you go through it in order, or is there a bit that you're looking for? Do you go straight to finances?
I tend to open every single one that I can, and even if I know instantly that you're not a right fit for me, I think we need to be supporting the region, especially if you're from the region, and who can we refer you to, whether that's NatWest, Barclays, Eagle Labs, Vernon, Davies, anyone in this ecosystem that can help or redirect you.
Cool. Okay, so gentlemen, final words for everyone in the room. And then once we're done with that, we'll move to networking. Sam, we'll start with you.
Thanks for coming. And if you're a founder in the room, just back yourself. Sometimes you can look at a business and go, not quite for us. But you look at the founder and you go, we're going to back them. They're going to do something big. So have the confidence, back yourself. Best of luck. Awesome. If you need any legal advice, here we are.
Keep fighting on, keep battling. Get the win to happen for you, but don't become delusional on feedback. Take stock of it, understand it, listen to what people are saying to you, because if you become delusional, you'll carry on just going from one accelerator program to another, and I'll meet you 5 years later and they're still going. I'm like, God, are you still doing the same thing? Yeah, because so make sure there's an understanding at what point do you say no and walk away, pivot hugely, and lots do. Davies and I have met. We've dealt with 2,000 founders over the last 3-4 years.
Yep.
Many have pivoted and built brilliant businesses, so don't become delusional.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just recapping everything today, you know, make sure you have a prepared data room. Make sure that your financial models are integrated with your pipeline if you do have a pipeline, because if you can't forecast your costs, how can you forecast your future, and how can I see that? Make sure your cap table's clean, and yeah, work on that narrative and that storytelling, you know, to capture my heart and my mind.
Awesome. Final words from me is ultimately what you're looking for is looking for you. So I would like to say thank you very much to every single one of you for taking time out to be here today. I hope it has been worth your time, as it has been enjoyable for us. We still have the room for a few more minutes. Please feel free to network with this gentleman, myself, and also other people in the audience. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Worth your time.